All right. Welcome to another episode of Turf Talk. Today, it looks a little different. I do have another guest from DSM Media. Dylan's out on vacation. Phil is always worthy to step up into the role and provide that co-host role for me. So, Phil Stiefel, welcome to the show, Beard of Knowledge on Twitter. Guys, I'm sure you guys know Phil already. As you know, he's part of the DSM crew here. You know myself, I am Scotty. You can find me on Twitter at Scotty Drowned. Guys, if you're not already subscribed to DSM Media, please be sure to do that now on YouTube. Make sure you're helping us grow this brand, support us, and spread the word. Phil, welcome to the show, man. You ready to talk some football?
I'm not used to not having a Corona and drinking coffee on the show. You know, I'm not used to 10:30 shows here in the morning.
Getting back in that, did you ever do like the pregame for the Eagles?
No, I always did postgame and halftime. So I can't guarantee my focus level at 10 a.m. in the morning. I haven't had enough caffeine coursing through the veins yet.
I get it, man, because me and Dylan are the same way. So we try to get it up and running, at least by 10:30 on Sunday mornings, just to get in the flow of waking up on Sundays, because it's getting to that time. And once the Eagles game days start coming back around, it's not going to be very hard for me to get that energy in the morning. Right. As far as getting on camera and talking, it's a little different, but just waking up in the morning on Sundays, which is, usually my off day, my rest day. So
me too.
Just getting up and getting to it. But today we got some interesting topics. It's going to be a very quarterback heavy show. We're going to talk about a lot of different quarterback situations. So first thing we'll go through QB competitions, just many of the QB competitions around the league, San Fran, New Orleans, New England, a lot of different, situations out there. And then we'll hop into just QBs in new places and kind of grading, those new fits for guys like Matthew Stafford, even Ryan Fitzpatrick with the Washington football team. And then we'll kind of finish it off with just some Eagles camp talk. As you know, this is a Philly-centric pod, Philly-centric media network. So we will get our Eagles talk in there at the end. And we'll talk a little bit about Jalen Hurts and his struggles, apparently in training camps per the notes. But we'll see. We'll get into that. But, Phil, let's jump right into it here. We got San Fran first on the list. It's Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. Kind of just want to get your opinion, and maybe we'll go back and forth of, what do we think San Fran will actually do, and what would you actually do in this situation? Because those two things may vary from team to team.
First off, don't forget, Nate Sudfeld's in that quarterback room too. The best thrower of the Eagles, according to Ron Jaworski. So don't forget about him. No, I actually think the 49ers, it's a great segue to a bunch of them. It depends on what the team's expectations are. San Francisco going into the season always has expectations to make the playoffs and to, make a run. So having Jimmy G as your starting quarterback, which is the way it should be and will be week one, is great twofold, because it gives Trey Lance, who out of the quarterbacks drafted this year, he is nowhere near the most NFL ready of any of them. He's probably the least NFL ready of all of them. But he's got the athleticism and the talent that if he's given time to watch and learn and slowly adjust with no pressure, he could become I think his ceiling is the highest. So I think Jimmy G will start because of, the circumstances of them wanting to win that division, which is going to be one of the toughest divisions in football.
Yeah.
But then if they fall out by week 5, 6, 7, they're out of the chase, they can easily transition to Trey Lance and let him just learn with no pressure. So I think it's a pretty good situation for him. I just feel bad for Jimmy Garoppolo, because first in New England and now in San Francisco, the guy's a talented quarterback. He's just keeps going to situations where he's the number 2 guy or the non-long-term guy. He never is being given the chance to be the guy for a lengthy period of time.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because, this was 2 years ago that he took the 49ers to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So
exactly. It's not like he was some, nobody quarterback. It's not like they brought in Nate Sudfeld just for, 2 or 3 games till Trey Lance is ready. Jimmy G is a Super Bowl quarterback. So
and that's kind of what I was going to ask you next. what is Jimmy Garoppolo's value? I mean, is that something that they can explore down the line? Is this like, what do you think the situation is here with them putting him out on the field? Because like you said, I do think week 1, Jimmy Garoppolo will start. You have to put him in there. He's the proven vet, and this is a team that could be ready to make the playoffs. So you have to put the guy that's in there, that's ready in there. You can't just throw Trey Lance out there as an experiment. But is this season for him just kind of like show what you got? You can, kind of build your resume back up and then find a spot on a new team. Is that what Jimmy G is doing here in San Francisco?
I think so. And if I was the coach and the GM of the 49ers, I would be giving Jimmy G the full 17 games, barring injuries and stuff like that, no matter what. Because Trey Lance is so raw and so young. You put him out there, you can really shake a young quarterback's confidence by putting them out there when they're not ready. I always look back at what's his name, Cincinnati's quarterback, Carson Palmer. Carried the clipboard his entire rookie year, never stepped foot on the field. I think they didn't even dress him every single week. Yeah. So that's when a quarterback's not ready. I know everybody wants to rush their first round quarterbacks back, but they need to do that. And then Jimmy G can then, earn his next job, prove he's still a quality, competent starting quarterback. If you look around the league, some of the guys that are starting quarterbacks on teams in this league, Jimmy G is better than quite a few of them. So there will be suitors for Jimmy G. And I don't remember the exact cap details and numbers, but that big contract he signed had pretty much outs every single year. So it's not a heavily guaranteed contract. So it's easy to move him if you have to after the season. But I'd like to see Jimmy G get the 17 games and prove his worth.
Yeah, and ultimately, I do agree. I think that's what will end up being best for San Francisco. Once again, just having a guy that's ran the offense before. Last season, it was a lot of injuries for the 49ers, and I think that kind of got misconstrued with Jimmy G. He kind of, when he did play, he played inconsistently, but he was also beat up most of the season. He was not healthy even when he was playing. So,
right.
And then you look at it, guys like Deebo Samuel, Mostert, those guys were beat up last year. You even look on the defensive end. The defense wasn't really helping them out because a lot of their whole secondary was beat up. Mm-hmm. And then they even lost, I believe they lost Bosa last year as well.
Yeah,
so
for a while, yeah.
They were just, they were hit by an insurmountable amount of injuries there. And I think it would just be best to play it out and see what you got in Jimmy G. Back to Trey Lance, I kind of just wanted to gauge you on that as well, because I know you keep saying that he's probably, and I agree, I think he is the rawest talent, especially that was drafted in that first round. A lot of guys have been commenting to me on Twitter because, I've been talking about Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, guys that are going to get the nod as soon as the week 1 hits. These are guys that are going to start. And, I think those are obviously the guys that are kind of leading the way for that rookie of the year conversation as passers. But everybody keeps bringing up Trey Lance to me, and even Justin Fields, who, and we can get into the Chicago one next, but these guys aren't going to start at the beginning of the season. So I'm wondering, how, people that are going to be watching this season are, valuing them so high. And then, you speak to Trey Lance's basically his inexperience from college. Even he didn't play that much in college. So we all know how North Dakota State quarterbacks make out in the NFL. So I'm there's a lot of people. It's not the stiffest competition they're facing out there in North Dakota. You know what I mean? I think people are valuing Lance and Fields because let's be honest. We'll get into Fields, and that's the Bears and the 49ers. Their division's super tough. Where are they in the pantheon of the rankings of the NFC West? You got the Rams, with Matthew Stafford now. You got Russell Wilson, Seattle, always a contender. Kyler Murray in Arizona, they're the hot favorite to win that division now. So if San Francisco falls out pretty quickly, that situation where now you put the rookie out there, same thing with Chicago, people, what did San Francisco? They gave up multiple first-round picks and a couple second-round picks to move up and get Trey Lance. There's going to be pressure from the front office, the ownership, and the fans to see the kid play. So I think that's why people are valuing some of these rookies a little higher than they should be. It's because the value invested to get them and then the pressure to put them on the field normally puts these kids out on the field sooner than they're ready. Now, I always take the conservative approach with, rookie quarterbacks. But, on the flip side of the equation, the outside pressures
outside of the locker room are what normally puts these guys out there so soon. And I could foresee a scenario where Trey Lance is starting week 2 or 3. But I wouldn't agree with it, but I can see that happening. If Jimmy G goes out week 1, doesn't do great, week 2 is against the Eagles, stinks week 2 against the Eagles, then all of a sudden you might see Trey Lance out there by week 3.
Yeah. And, I guess that was kind of what I was hinting at is, just with Fields and Lance specifically, just that dual threat compatibility that they bring, just that facet of the offense that they bring to the table. Younger quarterbacks with that ability can tend to get out of situations, can scramble out of the pocket. And part of the reason, I thought even with guys like Jalen Hurts last year when he steps in for Carson, just had a little bit more success because he's just a little bit more athletic than Carson and able to get out of that pocket to make up for a makeshift offensive line, to make up for missing weapons, stuff like that. So in those situations, those quarterbacks with the extra ability to scramble, they just give you a little bit more on offense when you need something, you need a spark. So I definitely get that part as well. So I'll actually wait on the Chicago because I do want to get to New Orleans here first. And I think, as we're talking about mobile quarterbacks, this fits the deal here. So Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston. I'm not huge on either of these guys, to be completely honest with you. And Taysom Hill, I'm kind of leaning more towards Jameis, and that shows you how down I am on Taysom Hill. But I want to kind of get your feel. What would you lean towards in this situation where you got Taysom Hill, who is that dual threat, very tough runner as well. He's a big dude. And then you have Jameis Winston, who is more of that, typical quarterback, sit in the pocket, make the throws. Which route do you think you would go in this situation? Which route do you think New Orleans is leaning?
If I was Sean Payton, my route would be going to retirement because this is going from Drew Brees to this decision. It's so freaking difficult because I'm like you, man. If Tim Tebow had a coach like Sean Payton that would have showed the confidence to keep him around as a quarterback this long, man, Tim Tebow might have stayed an NFL quarterback for a long time. I mean, Taysom Hill is basically Tim Tebow. A little bit better of a passer, obviously, and all. Dude, he is not an NFL quarterback, Taysom Hill. He's a gadget guy, fullback guy. I mean, he should be basically going the tight end fullback route. Let's be honest here. Yeah. But on the flip side of the equation, you got Jameis Winston, who throws more interceptions than touchdowns, like 40 interceptions to 39 touchdowns every year. The guy can sling the ball. He thinks he's Brett Favre and can squeeze it into tight spots, but he can't. Dude, if I had to pick, I would go Jameis because he's an NFL quarterback. But the drop off from Drew Brees for how long now to these two guys, but still to have a talented team around them, they should have gone out and found a quarterback that was more NFL quarterback ready. I'm not going to say Carson Wentz, but that was the first name available on my mind. There was, him. You could have gone out and gotten Jimmy G potentially from the 49ers. There are other NFL ready quarterbacks out there. They should have done that, or they should have gone and drafted an NFL caliber quarterback because there's going to be a significant drop off this year for the New Orleans Saints because of those two quarterbacks there.
And there's and I think that's a great point, just about addressing it in the draft. And this is the same way I feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers, is that you just keep going back to this well, and like the Saints just kept going back to the Drew Brees well, but in reality, and maybe they think Taysom Hill was that guy.
Well, that's the thing. They kept going back to the Drew Brees well because for some reason, Sean Payton, who is obviously smarter than the two of us combined when it comes to football. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from him. See something in Taysom Hill. I just don't. I can't tell you I would be confident New Orleans Saints fan knowing Taysom Hill. And I was reading up on all these quarterback battles right before the show, and the last daily report was Hill and Winston have gone 3 practices each without throwing a single touchdown in practice. They both have multiple interceptions. Winston obviously more because that's what he's known for, but they have no touchdown. You got Michael Thomas, Kamara. You better be throwing some touchdowns in practice. They're not. So, and they keep rotating from what I'm reading, first team reps. So at this point, 8 days into camp, 9 days into camp, they still have no idea who the starting quarterback is going to be in New Orleans.
And I think that says a lot, man. And, the big thing, I guess, that's been made about Jameis Winston, I guess he got eye surgery or he got new contacts or something. He can see 2020 now. It's his first season,
whatever.
full vision capabilities.
Whatever. Get that crap out of here. It's too early for excuses.
Oh my goodness. It will be interesting to see how that plays out in New Orleans. Just because we were looking at their division, a couple weeks ago, and just looking at the turnover that the Saints have had, they have lost a number of guys. Obviously the big one, Drew Brees, but even on that defensive end, their defensive line got ransacked as far as who they've lost. So I'm not very high on the Saints this year, man. And part of it is just that uncertainty at the QB position, obviously. But the Saints, they're just not looking that great. They're lucky, in the division, the NFC South, there's not much going on there. The Buccaneers. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see how this quarterback situation plays out, because ultimately that'll be how the Saints season plays out. So to move on, we'll get to Chicago, who just has, a jumble there at the quarterback position. Obviously, we know who the top two are between Andy Dalton and Justin Fields there. And then you have Nick Foles, who's running the third string offense there. As far as Chicago, man, see, I'm a little bit more on the other side with Chicago than I am with San Fran. So these are kind of, I won't call them similar situations, because I think Jimmy G's at a better status than Andy Dalton at this point. Now, Andy Dalton had a decent season with that.
Don't take anything away from Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton is a much better – I mean, he's not a great quarterback, but he's a much better quarterback than people give him credit for.
Yeah.
Especially when he was in Cincinnati. He was on bad teams in Cincinnati. Marvin Lewis could never get that team over an 8-8 clip and everything. So Andy Dalton is a good quarterback.
So what I think I know where you're leaning with this one then too. So would you start Andy Dalton over Justin Fields on this team then?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same reason why I would start Jimmy G over, whatever. You want Justin Fields to get as much time and practice. Yeah. Problem is, if you look at the Bears, are the Bears really contenders to, make the playoffs? Maybe. They don't have as much talent around them as the 49ers on offense. They have Allen Robinson, David Montgomery as a right back. They really don't have much at the Bears. So you also have to worry about, they got Green Bay, who's clearly going to run away with that division. Minnesota is still a really good team. And the Lions, they're in a rebuild, retool mode. But, they got Jared Goff, so we'll see what happens there. The Bears could fall out of it a lot quicker than the 49ers.
That's true.
Which then puts Justin Fields back into the picture a lot quicker. But Nagy, I think, is playing for his job. I think, their head coach, if they don't make a run with Andy Dalton, and all the times he said, we're committed to Andy Dalton, he is our starter. Yeah, that falls apart really quick. Nagy's out of a job. So Nagy's going to keep Dalton in there, I think, longer, because he's going to try to hold – if they're 5-8, 5-9, and there's like an backdoor chance to make a wild card spot, he's going to keep pushing that, because he wants, he wants to keep his job. This is his last chance in Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. And let me go ahead and say what's up to the guys. What's up, Adam? Thanks for checking in. Jason as well. Thank you for checking in, my man. Awesome show the other night. I think it was Thursday night I checked in with you. Awesome show. Make sure you're checking out Jason's show. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for tuning in, Jason. But yeah, to get back to the conversation, I guess my feelings, I said for me it's a little bit different from San Francisco to Chicago. And I think, now that you broke it down the way you did, because you're exactly right. I think San Francisco has a better team surrounding what would be Trey Lance or a Jimmy G than Chicago would surround Andy and Justin Fields here. But I guess it just speaks to my confidence in Justin Fields a little bit more than Trey Lance, just because we've seen a little bit more from Justin Fields in that sense. But yeah, as you talk through it does make sense. And I'm not on the side of throwing a QB into the fire. I'm really not. And I'm not into, ruining, because when you do that, you ruin some of their fundamentals. You ruin some of the, just basic techniques that they learn and that they're working on, their footwork, stuff like that, learning to stay in the pocket. As we mentioned, these dual threat quarterbacks, they need their discipline. You know what I mean? They need to learn that discipline of staying in the pocket, reading the field, rather than just, getting anxious and scrambling out of the pocket and making a broken play. So in that sense, I do tend to agree with you after you brought that up. Just a side tidbit here.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, keep going.
Oh no, I was just
mine was just a side tangent too, but
I was gonna bring up Doug Peterson. What were you gonna bring up?
I was just say Ohio State quarterbacks, in the NFL.
Generally,
it's the dumbest thing, and you can't really use that as a real stat. But there's, Justin Fields might need some time. Ohio State doesn't prepare you to play in the NFL. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins.
Jason said, "Badass background. I need your designer." Hey man, I'm sure. Jason, hit me up, my man. We can definitely make some stuff work for you. My boy Willie, my boy JD, they really get into the designing, all that producing stuff. So definitely hit my DMs. We'll definitely can set up something for you. But yeah, I just wanted to throw the side tidbit in there as well. The Ohio State thing is so true because you think about guys like Dwayne Haskins. You can go down the line. I mean, it gets bad, but. Just as far as Doug Peterson, seeing him on the sidelines there, I immediately thought when I saw him in the picture, I was like, oh, obviously he's good friends with Nagy from the Andy Reid tree, but that is a perfect place for him to kind of slide in there as an advisor or, whatever he wants to call himself, whatever they want to call him, and just be kind of like the next guy up if Nagy gets canned because if Chicago's season goes downhill, like you said, he's coaching for his job, and I haven't seen much out of Nagy that I would, he's supposed to be a guy that can work well with that offense. I haven't seen.
He butchered the Trubisky experiment, and now you're putting a new experiment in Justin Fields in his lap. So I do like having Doug Peterson there. I honestly, till I saw that picture, I didn't even know he was there. If it wasn't for that picture from camp, I don't think anybody knew. There was no report of him signing on with the Bears.
And I don't know that he even has
his best buddy Nick Foles is there, so there's a lot of little circle connections there going on.
So how about this? What are your thoughts? And I don't know how deep you get into college quarterback play,
right?
As far as situations with Fields, obviously he's in Chicago. You got Lawrence in Jacksonville, which Jason brought up here. He thinks Fields is going to end up being better than Lawrence. How do you feel in respect to that, as far as them as players and then their situations as well?
Yeah, I think they both link together because whenever you're taking first overall as a quarterback, pretty much means you're going to a pretty awful team. So Trevor Lawrence might not look like this superstar quarterback this year. He's a young kid. He's going to be thrown in the starting lineup, obviously, from week one. They don't have a boatload of talent yet. They got a lot of cap space. They've got a lot of young draft picks. So it's going to be tough to judge Lawrence. I mean, I don't watch the college game as much as other people do, but everyone's saying he's the best prospect since Andrew Luck at the quarterback position.
Yeah, that says a lot.
Andrew Luck, obviously, in different situations, might have been a Super Bowl winning quarterback. The guy had so much talent. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, he's going to a pretty iffy situation with a college coach. Those college coaches don't necessarily always work out. Justin Fields, could he be better than Trevor Lawrence? Maybe, Jason, but I don't know. I think Chicago, will take him a little slower. Trevor Lawrence, it's going to come down to Trevor Lawrence, how he can handle the adversity of being on he's won everywhere he's gone nonstop for his career. He's going to win 3 or 4 games maximum this year. How he handles that adversity, does he grow, does he learn and stuff like that? I'd still take Trevor Lawrence over Justin Fields any day.
Yeah, and I think I would too, just based off not only the pedigree but just the resume. I mean, he's been winning for a while. His freshman and sophomore year, he could have came out and would have been the number one quarterback. So, it's been this way for a while, but definitely a good call out. I think Chicago, if you talk about what they would be put into, I think Justin Fields would be in a little bit better situation. I'm not that high on Chicago's offense, but he would at least, as Jason said, he has a top wide receiver one in Allen Robinson, so that would help.
And that's the crazy thing about Trey Lance going to 49ers. At least he's going somewhere to a team that's going to win right away, and he's going to have time, if they win at first, to sit and develop because Jimmy G's there, and if they win like they're expected to a little bit, there will be no rush to put Trey Lance out there. Fields is going to be pushed into action probably a little quicker. Trevor Lawrence is starting from day one in a bad situation. So the spot you go to and the spot you get drafted to, it makes such a difference.
Yeah. And we'll get into even guys like Zach Wilson a little bit later. Because Zach Wilson's a guy that, and even Trevor Lawrence, I feel like has kind of gone under the radar. And, maybe it is because they're just starting out of the gate. There's no real competition there. They're coming out. They're starting week 1, and there's no question about it. So maybe that's why it's not being talked about as much. But Zach Wilson's another exciting guy out there in New York for the Jets. So we'll get to the next QB situation. This one's actually pretty interesting for me. I think Denver has a great surrounding cast for their quarterback situation. And they were one of those teams, when Aaron Rodgers was still being rumored he wanted out, they were one of those teams with John Elway at the helm that were, kind of interested in going after Aaron Rodgers. Now, they went out and got Teddy Bridgewater from Carolina over the offseason for like a 5th or 6th round pick, which I thought that was crazy. But, Teddy Bridgewater isn't this household name at quarterback like everyone may think. The 2-glove Teddy, never been a fan of the 2 gloves with the quarterback position.
I've tried so hard to throw a football with a glove on. I just can't. No.
I cannot do it.
It's a weird feeling.
Do it. I cannot get behind that. It doesn't make sense to me. But we're looking at Denver. We got Drew Lock. We got Teddy Bridgewater. I'm just looking at, last season's stats. Bridgewater had a better season in Carolina. Overall, how are you feeling with these 2 quarterbacks? Just as far as the surrounding cast, who could do the most with that team versus who gives you the most upside? How do you feel about that?
Well, Lock's the younger guy, so I guess he's got the more upside. I'm not a Drew Lock fan. I think Drew Lock is terrible. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. But this is going to be his year. Teddy Bridgewater, I was trying to come up with like a catchy phrase, like he's the bridge to the future or something, but it didn't really work out in my mind as it should have. Teddy Bridgewater is a placeholder. He's not a build your franchise kind of guy. So if they would have gotten Aaron Rodgers, Bridgewater would have been a good backup. If they would have drafted someone in the 1st round, he would be a good bridge till the young kid is ready. But Drew Lock, we've seen now for a full year. I can't get behind Drew Lock. So I think that the surrounding talent is great there in Denver. Well, has the potential to be great. It's young, but whatnot. But their quarterback position is the biggest question mark. So I think Bridgewater is more talented enough to win out the day 1 starting job. But why would Denver give him the job over their young kid to give him one more shot to figure it out? I don't know. This is the one that confuses me the most because there's so many negatives around picking both guys. And there's not many net positives about either guy to pick from.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing. And just want to shout out, Coach Dante. Thanks for checking in. He said, "What up?" That's on YouTube. Thanks for checking in on YouTube. Love our views there. Got Devin Bender checking in from Facebook. Thank you for checking in, Devin. Waiting on Judy to explode on the scene. Yeah, we all kind of are. And, I think that's part of what we're talking about here is who's going to give him the best opportunity to explode.
But how can they explode when they have Drew Lock and Bridgewater?
I know.
They had to do something, whether it was Aaron Rodgers. Again, Carson Wentz was the name that was out there. There were quarterbacks out there. Jameis Winston signed another 1-year deal with the Saints. They could have gotten him. There were quarterbacks out there that would have given you a better chance Judy, Hamler, Sutton. They have great wide receivers there. Young, but great. They're not going to take that leap forward, those wide receivers, with Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. They're just not.
Yeah, and, maybe – and I see what Jason's putting in here. Obviously, Devin had some things to say about Judy. And maybe he is the wide receiver 1 that can make quarterbacks look better as well. You know what I mean? Maybe. We'll see how good he is. Bridgewater gives their offense the best chance. Yeah, I think
by a small margin, though, because it's not like Teddy Bridgewater is a superstar quarterback. He's not going to lead you to –
my thing with Bridgewater is just that he's not like the risk taker. He's not going to, go down the field. He's not going to get these guys big plays on offense, but he will take care of the football. And that's kind of the opposite end of the scale there. And you mentioned somebody that's very interesting. And as soon as you said it, I was like, well, yeah, I think he would give them a better chance just because he'll take risks and he'll air it out. And that is Jameis Winston. I think that he would be a better quarterback for them.
He would.
You look at Jameis Winston with talent around him, he can sling it. That's one thing he can do. Now, the turnovers is definitely the biggest thing with Jameis, but he's not the Teddy from Minnesota from years past anymore.
That injury was killer for him, so that really takes out his career.
That was kind of his X factor. So, yeah, I think we agree there. Teddy Bridgewater should get the nod. Now, let me ask you this. which way do you think Denver actually goes in this situation? Because I feel like they have a little bit invested into Drew Lock. I think they like him, and I think that's weird.
If it's a close quarterback battle going on, like really close, then Lock gets it because of his youth, and you got to see what you got with your young drafted quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater, you gave up a 6th-round pick for him. I think they'll lean towards Drew Lock, but if they want to be taken even remotely serious, they should lean towards Teddy Bridgewater.
I agree, and I think he gives them the best chance. And I just want to end that, kind of the Denver talk with, they have a really good defense. I was looking at their they have a really deep secondary, which is always a great thing. Their pass rush, you already know, with Chubb and Von Miller out there. But you even look to their offense. They have a couple running backs in that backfield with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, the rookie. And then you look at Cortland Sutton, who's coming off an injury, but was very good before the injury. Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. So Noah Fant, another talented tight end as well. So they got some talent there. Maybe it can hide some of the deficiencies from the quarterback position, or maybe the quarterback will sink this team all the way down like I think it ultimately will. The next one I want to get into is New England. And this one's kind of easier for me. I'm not, super high on Mac Jones, but ultimately when you're thinking about New England and what they're trying to do here, does Cam Newton put them in that division race with Miami, with Buffalo? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Does Cam Newton put you over the top? Does he get you into a playoff situation? How do you feel about Cam Newton and Mac Jones there?
Well, yeah, I'm like you, not super high on Mac Jones, but so I want to backtrack to last year. Cam Newton going to New England, he was like a 65-1 to win the MVP. And I'm like, if any coach can figure a quarterback out and get anything out of a quarterback, it would be Bill Belichick. So I bet Cam Newton to have, MVP comeback type season, because if it was going to happen, it was going to happen under Bill Belichick's watch. Yeah. Cam Newton had a terrible season last year. A lot of factors. The Patriots had the most people, opt out because of COVID, so that their team took a huge hit right before the season started. He was injured again a lot of the year. I'm not as high on Miami in that division as everybody else is. I don't know if Cam Newton's got anything left in the tank to really lead a team. And I really think Bill Belichick, maybe not week 1, but if he even has a remotely awful start to the season, Cam Newton, by week 2, 3, Mac Jones is going to be your guy. Bill Belichick's not afraid to throw the young guy out there. I mean, look at, Tom Brady was a nobody. Drew Bledsoe got hurt. Tom Brady was put right in there. So he might go with Mac Jones a lot sooner than you think, because that second spot in the division, I think, is completely up for grabs behind Buffalo. I am not a fan of Miami at all this year.
Yeah, and we haven't actually got into the AFC East on this show just yet, but you talk about quarterback situations. I mean, Miami, we don't know what Tua is just yet. Some people are high on Tua, some people are in the middle. I'm down on him. I'm not a Tua fan. From what I've seen, and it looked like they played better with Fitzpatrick at times last year. So I feel like that says a lot. Jason has a huge point here. I think Cam Newton, the Patriots went out and spent this season, right? They went out and got Jonnu Smith from the Titans at that tight end position. Went out and got Nelson Aguilar's. Now, Nelson Aguilar, Jonnu, they aren't the top of the position, but they did try to add some talent on that offense.
They got another tight end too, didn't they? They
did. I can't remember who it was. If you could find that, definitely let me know. But I cannot remember who the other tight end was. But let me check in. We're getting a lot of comments in here. JD, thank you for checking in, brother. Love to see you here this morning. Yeah, 2 top line tight ends, Aguilar. Jason says Aguilar is going to have 1,000 yards this season.
I don't know if he's really serious there. Hunter Henry. They picked up Hunter Henry and Jonah Smith as their tight ends. So, they've got quite the tight end, duo there.
Yeah. Who was the other one you said?
Jonah and Hunter Henry.
Hunter Henry. Okay, yeah. So that was the big name we were forgetting there. That is actually a nice duo, and they do well with 2 tight ends, as we know from past there. And then Devin chiming in. Miami is questionable with their issues with defensive players wanting out. Good thing for Miami. They did. I believe they agreed with.
They extended. They fixed Xavier Howard. Announced early this morning.
That's huge.
It's the first player ever to have his contract renegotiated with 4 years left on it still. I mean, the guy's still got 4 years left on his contract, and they already renegotiated. Dude, I want his agent. Can his agent renegotiate my deal here with DSM?
Right. We gotta renegotiate every month.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on? We will see if the gear that offense more towards Tua play style. That's very fair because Tua is another one that is part of that dual threat. Had that hip issue though. It's like, do you really want to put him out there, get him hit, all that type of stuff, see how durable he is? Two legends doing a show on a Sunday morning. Jason, thank you for checking us out, man. That's our guy from over at Fairway to Heavens on DSM Media. Thanks for checking in. But yeah, as far as New England, I think that's an easier one with Cam Newton. He's the guy. They brought him back for a reason, I believe. He's a more proven guy. And when you have your question marks with Miami, now overall, I do think Miami is the number 1-2 team, or the number 1-2 team, number two team in the AFC.
Take another sip of that coffee.
Right. I'm still waking up here. And then we talk about Josh Allen with the Bills. That's probably a lock at that number 1 spot. They just extended him with a massive deal as well. Which, just before we move on to Indy, I want to kind of ask you, would you have given that extension? Do you think that he's earned that at this point?
Well, he's earned it, and that's the way the NFL is going. You give the big contracts to the quarterbacks. Problem is, it's just so hard to win after you give out those big deals to quarterbacks. It's so hard to balance out your salary cap and get a great team around them. But I don't think that cap hit hits just yet. I think it's another year or two before the big, the big money starts hitting the cap. So they have a window now. They really got to capitalize. I think they're 1-2 with the Chiefs for the AFC. So McDermott, their coach, seemed to put a pretty solid game plan around him last year. It'll be interesting to see if they can build upon it. There's 1 or 2 moments in the playoffs where Josh Allen showed his youthfulness, and that's why they didn't make the Super Bowl. So it's going to be the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes AFC show for a long time to come. It's just a matter of whether that big contract, the biggest contract so far, he beat out Patrick Mahomes on guaranteed money. That's saying what the Bills think of him. Yeah. But is he better than Patrick Mahomes? No, but that's the next guy that comes up for a big deal will beat Josh Allen's money, whether he's better than Josh Allen or not. So it's kind of the way just the NFL goes.
So I got kind of a double-edged question here. So and I know Devin Benner, I believe he would probably know the answer to this, but has Lamar Jackson been extended yet? Did I miss that?
Let me Google search that.
Because then the follow-up question to that is, who would have more pressure?
The first thing that pops up when I type in Lamar Jackson contract, first thing that says, what does Josh Allen's mega deal mean when
Lamar Jackson's
gets contract? So he's not been signed yet. So do you think he's worth more than Josh Allen? I don't know. I haven't seen enough out of his passing game, because when you have dual threat quarterbacks, the way the NFL is going these days is that the dual threat quarterback is okay to win with, but the dual threat quarterback has to still be a solid passer.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson has shown he's not a great passer. He makes some big plays on the move and all, but he's not a great passer in my opinion. So Josh Allen has shown that he can win with his arm or his legs. So I think he ends up a little bit below Josh Allen, but Baltimore's if he asks for more money, Baltimore's gonna have to give it to him.
Have to do it, because that's my biggest thing. And I'll even go out on a limb here and say it. I mean, I think Josh Allen's a better quarterback. As far as the contracts, everything with that, you look at Lamar Jackson's accolades, the MVP, all of that hype that surrounds Lamar Jackson, it may end up getting him more money than Josh Allen. And I guess the follow-up question I was going to ask, which maybe it's not even fair at this point with Lamar not being extended yet, but who has more pressure on themselves going into this season to take that next step? Because we've seen Lamar Jackson get to the same spot despite having great regular seasons. And, similar situation to Josh Allen, which he kind of got to a further step this past season. But, who's under more pressure to take the next step? It's obviously Josh Allen at this point.
I would disagree. I would say Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen's got his big paycheck. Yeah, Josh Allen got the money. Lamar Jackson's going to want to now beat Josh Allen's deal. Every quarterback wants to beat the last quarterback's contract. Josh Allen wanted to beat the Dak Prescott deal. Dak Prescott wanted to beat the Patrick Mahomes deal.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. Lamar Jackson isn't going to beat Josh Allen's deal if he doesn't have a great season. And the AFC East or the AFC Central or whatever, North, is it
weird?
Sorry, man. I can't figure it out. I need more coffee. That's a tough division. It's going to be hard for him to stand out. The Steelers still have, some talent, some players there. The Bengals, Joe Burrow, we'll see what he is this year coming back from his ACL. But I think it's the Browns division. And so if there's going to be a lot of competition in that division, he's going to have to really, really, really stand out to get that Josh Allen money. He really is. And I don't think he's capable of doing enough with that team to make it happen.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a conversation for a different day, but what have the Ravens – I know they added Sammy Watkins. I do like Rashad Bateman, but, not adding, over-the-top talent to give him help either. So, I know people are kind of happy they got Sammy Watkins. They got Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman's a rookie. Sammy Watkins was a second, third-tier guy on the Chiefs who wasn't relied on too much. He made big plays from time to time. But a guy that's often injured, often has a lot of stuff going off, off the field. So it'll be interesting to see how that Baltimore plays out. Because
Devin's saying that this is what that Lamar has to do. I can't see Lamar Jackson throwing for 5,000 yards.
Yeah, that seems almost impossible.
And he doesn't have enough offensive weapons to throw 30-plus touchdowns. Now, can he rush for 5,000 combined yards with passing? Maybe. Can he have a combined rushing and passing touchdowns at 30? Maybe. But that's combined numbers. That's the max he can do, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with all of you guys. I think he needs to take a bigger step than what he's going to be capable of this season. And I think as we have watched Lamar down the line, and there's going to be people that argue, there's going to be people that say, well, he threw over 30 touchdowns before. Yeah, when the defense doesn't know what to do to stop you, we've seen the defense pack it in every year in the playoffs, and they shut him down. They force him to throw, and it's just creating this, this blueprint in order to stop Lamar Jackson. And as a mobile quarterback, that's the last thing you want to see being developed in the NFL. It definitely means bad news. So we'll transition here. Kind of got a little off topic there, but we're talking QBs. It's an open field here. Indianapolis, they got a lot going on. We basically passed the Wentz torch to Indy. As soon as he gets there, he has a broken bone in his foot. How I'm trying to, find a good way to phrase this without, being totally disrespectful, but what should the Colts do in this situation? There's a lot of rumors. Frank Reich was in a press conference actually talking about Nick Foles and adding him to the locker. You know what I mean? He was actually talking about it. In a lot of these situations, these people won't be that open in their feelings about these players that aren't even on their team. But how realistic do you think it is that they would bring in somebody to supplant Carson until he gets back from that injury?
I think it depends on what they really feel that 5 to 12 weeks. That's a huge 5 weeks means he's ready for week 1.
Right.
So 12 weeks, obviously is halfway through the season. That's such a huge window. So I could see them. It depends on what if they bring in Nick Foles or get Phillip Rivers out of retirement, that means they think Carson Wentz is going to be gone for the longer portion of that thing. But if they just recently signed Brent Hundley, backup from Green Bay. He was a UCLA Bruin quarterback, came out, a few years ago. I mean, he started 9 or 10 games in the NFL. If they think Carson Wentz will be back by week 1, week 2, they're probably just going to run with Brent Hundley. He's not a great quarterback, but the Colts have a solid enough team where they'll be competitive for the first week or two with Brent Hundley in there.
Yeah.
But if they think Carson Wentz is going to miss 5, 6, 7 games, they will go get Nick Foles or Phillip Rivers. I don't know. I think actually Phillip Rivers is probably the smarter option.
I was going to say,
100% fully focused on what they're doing there, having just retired. But that's about it.
Jason said Jacob Eason is the backup there. Yeah. For now, I guess I think what Phil's getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, Brett Hundley, would eventually get that role once he figures out the offense. He's only been there for a week now?
Less than a week, yeah. So yeah, I just double checked. Brett Hundley is the backup there. They did sign him this past week right after the Carson injury.
Okay, so maybe they did say Eason is the back. Either way, neither of those guys are who you want to go into multiple games starting a quarterback.
Whoever they choose, if they don't make the change, that means Carson will be back by week 1 or 2. That's the point there.
Gotcha. And so my next question would, if they do get a chance to bring in a Nick Foles, a Phillip Rivers, should they do that, even if he is out 5 weeks? As far as Carson's mental, a lot of people think he broke down mentally in Philadelphia due to Nick Foles, due to Jalen Hurts, due to these backup quarterback situations. How do you feel on that scale as far as protecting Carson Wentz, if you want to call it his ego or his mental health, versus, making sure your team is good to go and keeps themselves in with playoff hopes alive?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer,
right?
Really. Because I'm so confused on Carson's mental aspect of his game. You bring in Nick Foles. Obviously, even if he comes back, there's going to be constantly Nick Foles there with him. That's bad. But if Nick Foles, of all people, messes with Carson's psyche, what do you think Phillip Rivers, a first ballot Hall of Famer, is going to do to mess with Carson Wentz's psyche? I mean, he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Yeah. So, I mean, you got the guy that beat 1 year Super Bowl for you, and you got a guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I think Carson's psyche loses and mental edge loses in both situations.
Yeah, and I was literally just thinking that as you were kind of putting that out there. But, what if Phillip Rivers comes, he has to play the first 4 or 5 games, and they go 4-1, or they go 5-0? I mean, what happens then? Do you bring Carson back in and put Phillip on the bench? Phillip, who you said is a first ballot Hall of Famer here, last season didn't play bad. Like, he played pretty good. He led them to a playoffs. You
could see the age. You could see his, arm strength wasn't perfect on really hard, firm, fast throws, like out patterns and stuff. But the guy still led the team pretty damn well last year. So he's still got something left in the tank.
And so Devin's saying they should look at Gardner Minshew. See, and I think that would be even worse for Wentz, because if Gardner Minshew, he's a younger guy, if he comes and does it, that's going to be even worse for Wentz's mental, as well as everything that's going on there in Indy.
I guess if I had to pick one, Rivers would be the best, because Rivers already retired and he's pretty much done. You're just bringing Rivers in as a placeholder till Wentz is healthy. Maybe Rivers for the rest of the season, once Wentz is back, is a good mentor for Carson. I don't know. I'm stuck on this one.
He said he was hoping that Mason, that the Steelers, he's a Steelers fan, so he's hoping that the Steelers dealed Mason to the Colts. And then we do have, they need to bring back Rivers. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think Rivers would be the best option. I think it would be a little bit less, pandemonium if you bring back Rivers. If you bring back Foles, you're opening up a can of worms, and you can only blame yourself at that point. Honestly, at one point in Philadelphia, I was like, we have to get rid of Foles just to protect Wentz, because, there's just no point in this. We have a franchise quarterback. We got to roll with him. But, I had Devin chiming in here talking about Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins and the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, as far as he's not sure about Dwayne Haskins, which you should.
Nobody should. And Dwayne Haskins isn't sure about Dwayne Haskins.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was commenting earlier on the Steelers. They just really haven't addressed that quarterback room in the succession plan for Ben Roethlisberger. And it's concerning to me. I mean, obviously I don't care if the Steelers are successful, from a fan standpoint, but just from a football analysis standpoint, what are you doing at the quarterback position? There's been rumors that their plan is to, put Mason Rudolph out there when Big Ben's done. Haven't they tried that experiment before? Like, I don't see the point in that.
They better hope that Ben's willing to play another year or two, because they need to really, address it in the draft. Whether it's this year or whatever, there is no plan. So they're either going to have to make a big trade, for somebody, Watson, Rodgers, Wilson, the names that constantly are available in trades, but then never seem to go anywhere. Or they're going to have to draft. And if they draft a rookie quarterback next year, they're going to have to hope Roethlisberger's around for one more year to help groom that quarterback.
Yeah, I totally agree. So they'll have to figure something out there in Pittsburgh. But it is interesting that I'm wondering if they feel like they addressed, the the quarterback position by bringing in Dwayne Haskins. That is not the move. And then George chimed in here, bringing any competent QB will lead to a Wentz meltdown. And maybe that is what it is. We can only wait and see if that's the case. But I'm not going to doubt what George is saying there. But thanks for checking in, George, of course. And then we have Young Gibbs checking in. And by the way, everybody, my real name is Andre. Scotty is my podcast name. So the alias, let Dre play QB. He's referring to me. He wants me to go out there and man the quarterback position for the Colts. Which, if they're willing to pay me Carson Wentz money, I would definitely go out there.
You tell me you wouldn't take a little bit less.
That good, but
you would even take a little bit less, probably.
So we might as well be entertained by a full sequel. I tend to agree with that as well. If
it would be fun.
Let it happen.
Since it's not happening in Philly anymore, that would be fun.
Yeah, who cares at that point? So we'll go through really quick. I do want to do QBs in new places and then top 5 QB situations. We'll run through these really quick. So I'm just going to go through a list of QBs in new situations, and you can kind of give me a grade, and then I'll kind of reflect on what you're giving to me. Thank you, Jason. Likewise, brother. I appreciate you always checking in. You always keep it entertaining in the comments, so I appreciate you as well, my man. What's up, Philly, the podcast? Thanks for checking in, bro. I appreciate all the love here. Keep the comments coming. We love to get you involved in the show. So QBs in new places. Let's go ahead. We'll let everybody know what we're doing here. Stafford in LA, Phil. What is the fit grade-wise? What are your expectations for him in LA?
Well, the trade itself was an A. I thought they made a great trade. We'll find out. I'm going to give it like a B. And that's only because I'm not sold 110% on their coach. I mean, what's his name? Jared Goff's not a great quarterback, but he was a good quarterback, and they just couldn't get it done. So I'm going to say B because I'm still questioning the coaching and the philosophy of that team.
And that's fair. That's fair. Some people, are really impressed by Sean McVay. He is one of those young coaches that everybody covets these days, those young offensive minds. But it'll be interesting. Is Jared Goff, that much of a, downgrade from Matthew Stafford? We can only wait and see. Jared Goff was the first pick in the draft, right? Exactly. So, is his talent level that far, below Matthew Stafford's? I do believe so. I'm a huge Matthew Stafford guy. And I'm not a McVay. Draft Stafford in every fantasy league. Depends what type of fantasy league you're in. Stafford is a little bit up there in age, but I do think that as far as fit in that offense, as long as he can stay healthy, I think that's the biggest thing there.
And people forget he has been pretty healthy most of his career.
Yeah, it's just been those recent years, and I think part of that is Detroit also throwing in the towel some of those seasons as well, where it's not worth him going back out there to play for a 4-12 season. So. I do think, Matthew Stafford fit in LA is beautiful. I honestly I'm anxious to see the fit and see how it plays out, see if he can elevate guys like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, even Deshaun Jackson out there as a third option wide receiver. So I would tend to agree. I'm going to go more towards the A side. I think they were, I don't want to say a quarterback away because they went to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff, but I do want to say, I do think Matthew Stafford is an upgrade to Jared Goff in that sense. Yeah. So right on the opposite end of the scale, we'll go to Jared Goff in Detroit. How do we feel about Jared Goff's fit in Detroit, as well as his situation, the surrounding talent?
Yeah, I was going to say it's because I'm going to say a C because, a new young coach, no experience, Dan Campbell or whatever, tight ends coach being a head coach. They're if they didn't trade for Jared Goff, you would almost think they're in full rebuild mode. Jared Goff keeps them out of rebuild and more into that retool mode, but they're really, really not set up for having a good season at all this year. Sorry, Jason, if you're watching still. So, my man's a Detroit guy, and they're not set up to have a good season there in Detroit whatsoever.
Yeah, and okay, we got the comments. So first we got Golf is doomed, and most likely, name a wide receiver for the Lions.
No,
right? No. T.J. Hawkinson's probably their best offensive weapon. Just off the top of my head, but And then George chiming in, Goff in any situation is puke. So we see how George feels about Jared Goff there. Tyrell Williams, that's a good call there, Jason. That's probably their best wide receiver, but a guy that's coming off a huge injury there in Las Vegas last year. So we'll have to see how he bounces back. But, yeah, Detroit overall is inept of weapons. I do like DeAndre Swift. But once again, I think people are a little too high on him in an offense where there's not a lot going on. He's going to be key to in most games.
Absolutely.
So we'll move out of Detroit. Yeah, I'm with you on Detroit. I actually gave them a D as far as golf. And it's not really all on golf. It's just that surrounding cast, new coach, everything you mentioned. Sam Darnold in Carolina. How do you like that fit?
Well,
how do you feel about Sam Darnold?
Yeah, how I feel about Sam Darnold would be a C. But how I feel about that fit in Carolina might be closer to a B, maybe B minus, C plus. This is Sam Darnold's chance. He's got Christian McCaffrey, one of, if not the best running backs. He's got 3 solid wide receivers, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, David Moore. You know, they have talent there. And they have a great – I love Rule. I think he's going to be a great NFL coach.
Yeah.
This is his chance. You know, well, we will see. If he does not have a successful year this year, they can make a judgment on 1 year with Sam Darnold and then move on because this is their year. This is his year to prove it. So the situation I love. Sam Darnold, big question mark though.
Yeah, and I guess for me, Sam Darnold, I'm kind of where you are as far as a C. And when I say C, it's just because this guy was a high draft pick. He obviously had potential and he had talent, but we also just don't know what the hell he is. He played with Adam Gase. He played with the New York Jets for the first part of his career. So how can you really judge anybody fairly in that offense in reality? You mentioned the weapons around him in Carolina. This is it. This is your chance. You have weapons. You've had years to get your feet under you in New York. You've seen the toughest of tough situations. So Carolina should be a breath of fresh air.
And there's no pressure in Carolina compared to New York. You don't have that New York media breathing down your neck either.
Yeah, so George thinks Darnold is a placeholder, sniffing around Houston, and that's very fair. Obviously, you mentioned Deshaun Watson, if he gets cleared in Houston there with those cases, that is another spot that he could end up. He has ties to the Carolina area with that Clemson resume. So definitely understand that. Darnold for me is he has upside in my opinion. I think we get to see the true Darnold this season. You have a Christian McCaffrey who's a quarterback's best friend. He's a bailout. He's a safety valve. He's everything that you need out of the running back in the passing game. And he's going to take a ton of attention and pressure off Sam Darnold as well. And then you mentioned DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. Love that tandem at wide receiver. The upside is in the system, not the player. That's fair, and that is fair. We don't know what Sam Darnold is, but I do trust the system. You mentioned Matt Rule. I'm a big fan of Joe Brady as well, who's offensive coordinator there. So exciting times. They have a little reason to be optimistic this season because Sam Darnold is an unknown, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one I wanted to get to, Fitzpatrick on the Washington football team. He should start this season, and rightfully so. I think this could be the best we see from Fitzpatrick as far as surrounding talent. I mean, that Washington football team has a great defense. They've been able to put some weapons on the offensive end. How do you feel about the fit for Ryan Fitzpatrick in Washington?
Fantastic. I mean, I think Washington's going to win the division. I mean, we said last year all along, before the season last year, Washington was a quarterback away from being a juggernaut in this division. Fitzpatrick isn't like a long-term answer. He's 37, 38, but you got Terry McLaurin, you got Antonio Gibson, and you got probably the most underrated tight end in Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
You got 3 weapons at 3 different positions. You got a quarterback that knows how to win, and you got a top-tier defense. So I think the fit and the situation out of all the quarterbacks that change teams, this is probably the best fit for anybody at this point.
Yeah, and you look at it. You look at the teams that we've mentioned throughout this show that went out and didn't really address the quarterback position in the best way possible. But for Washington, they only had a few options, right? They could go out, get a veteran that could go right now, or they could reach into the draft and pick a questionable prospect because they weren't that high up in the draft either. So with Washington, they were kind of stuck, between a rock and a hard place. They get Fitzpatrick, who's proven could probably get some upside in this system with a great surrounding talent. It's probably the best team that he's played with in a while. But I'm just looking at the offense with Scary Terry, with Gibson. They added Curtis Samuel, who I also loved from Carolina. He's that Swiss Army knife on offense that I love. If they can figure out a good way to use him like Carolina did, that would be awesome. The best we see of him which week depends on which side of the bed he gets out. That's fair.
That's fair. He does have his down games too.
He does.
He actually does. But that team around him is so good that even when he has an off game, they just hand the ball off to Gibson if they need to, or their defense can carry them to a win or two sometimes. So the situation around him, I think, is a little bit better in my opinion.
And so then my next question would be, like, who was the quarterback in Washington last year? It was Dwayne Haskins. I know he started the first game against.
It was Alex Smith.
Alex Smith played.
He retired, and then they had towards the playoffs Tyler Heineke.
Yeah,
that's what I was
thinking of. And
he's still there. He's still there as the backup. Tyler Heineke.
They competed with Heineke, so like that shows you the talent that is there surrounding the quarterback position, because he was a guy that came out of nowhere,
basically.
The next one I wanted to ask you about is Zach Wilson in the New York Jets in New York. How do you feel about that fit for a rookie quarterback? Is he kind of just getting thrown into the fire there? And then, I'm not somebody who has a great knowledge of Zach Wilson from college. I know a lot of people say he's that one-hit wonder guy, the 1 year, amazing year, and now he's getting drafted number 2 overall. How do you feel about Zach Wilson, and how do you feel about the New York Jets with Robert Saleh at that?
Well, Robert Saleh was my number 1 coaching want for the Eagles. That's who I wanted. I love defensive-minded coaches. Problem with Zach Wilson is, came out of BYU. He's we'll see. Not me. My beard is nowhere near as good as those guys. Not even close. Not close.
I had to throw that one up there.
I cannot name one member of the New York Jets football team off the top of my head. None. I can't.
I know.
That's got to mean that he's in a bad situation, right?
Denzel Mims, just because
Did they just say he might get cut from the team?
They did.
The first guy you named is a guy in his second year that's on a roster bubble. So that doesn't tell me anything right there. So the situation's not good. But I don't think there's any pressure in New York right now. You got a rookie head coach, a rookie quarterback coming from a non-major program. There's no pressure in New York. So that's the only positive thing I can say about his situation.
So what would you grade it as far as like an F?
Incomplete?
Incomplete. That's
C minus if I have to give it a grade. D plus. I'll grade it on a curve and go C minus instead of the D plus.
So I got their team pulled up here. I'll give you some names on offense. They might sound familiar. They might not. So they got Corey Davis. They got him from Tennessee. So he's a wide receiver 1 now.
But he was a great wide receiver too. I don't know if he could be a number one wide receiver.
Jamison Crowder is their wide receiver 2 right now. Keelan Cole from Jacksonville. And then the one guy I do like out of their wide receiving core is Elijah Moore, who's a rookie. But, we have to throw that in there. But he's explosive. I do like him. But yeah. So we got some guys coming in with the comments. Yeah, they drafted Elijah Moore. I'm with you, Jason. I do like Elijah Moore a lot, but we got to hope that he's not the number 1 wide receiver out there. That's a lot of pressure for him. Wilson needs time. He will still have coming out of this year. Yeah, I do agree with that as well. Yeah. Is he ready to be thrown into a fire in New York? I mean, that's a lot, but as Phil mentioned, it's probably the least amount of pressure in a while.
You think about it, you got Buffalo, you got New England, you got the Dolphins. They're not even remotely close to compete yet in that division. So you could take your time, learn, see what you got. But I'm not excited about that situation.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jason. I did like Elijah Moore for the Eagles as well. So the next one we'll go to, and you can kind of make this one quick. We have Wentz to Indy, which we kind of already went over that. But if you just want to give a grade, that'll be good enough.
Before he got hurt, I would have put it as B plus. I mean, I'm a Wentz guy, always have been. It was a great situation for him, but now he's hurt, so who knows what's going to happen there?
Yeah, definitely. And then Jalen Hurts finally getting the nod in Philly. Obviously, he didn't come from a different team, but how do you feel about his fit just with a full season to go?
I mean, if he's given the full season, it's a great fit. I like it. I want to see what he's got. I'm a Hurts guy. I haven't shied away from that. I've liked Hurts, since the day they drafted him. So
yeah, and you have stuck true to that. I will say that. Even with you were a Wentz guy as well at the same time, but you've definitely.
Let me rephrase that. I was a Wentz guy. I was upset that the Eagles drafted Hurts, but on the flip side, because I didn't want to lose Wentz, I was just a Hurts fan in general of his skill talent and how his leadership and his mental toughness would handle the NFL.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Before we get into some Eagles camp talk, because I know George, especially Jason as well. I'm sure they're just waiting there steadily for the Eagles talk. Top 5 QB situations in the NFL. You don't have to give me 5. Just give me kind of your best situations. They don't have to be in any particular order. Just some teams that you think, regardless of the quarterback that would be there, they would still be a playoff team, basically.
Well, the Bills and the 49ers, or Bills and the Chiefs, Mahomes and Allen, they're the clear-cut top situations, great coaches, great weapons, great defenses, great everything around them. And I'm going to give you 2 that I really like this year. I also talk about them as, George, he knows where I'm going with this. They're 2 sneaky MVP bets. Mayfield's 27-1 and Tannehill's 33-1. I may have those numbers backwards. Maybe one's like 33-1, one's 27-1. Ryan Tannehill and Baker Mayfield, I think, are set up for really long-term success, or at least the franchises are, because they've got talent on both sides of the ball. They got underappreciated quarterbacks. The Browns and the Tennessee Titans, they're going to have great seasons this year.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned pretty much all the teams on my list here. So I had the Cleveland Browns as my number 1 spot for a QB right now. You talk about weapons with OBJ, they still got Jarvis Landry. They got, a couple different tight ends at their disposal there. But
running backs.
Yeah, the double-edged sword in the backfield. I mean, that's the crazy part when you're talking about Nick Chubb and then Kareem Hunt, who are 2. Where would you rank them? Are they top 15 to top?
Nick Chubb, I would put in top like 6. I mean, I'm not in any season-long fantasy football leagues, but he'd be a top 10 pick, top 7 pick maybe for me. I love Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's a great running back.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt kind of just presents that other side of of the dual.
Kareem Hunt could start on other teams for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you talk about the offense with the Hunt is up and down
because he's not the starter. It depends on the situation but if he was in another situation, I think he'd be starting in other teams.
Yeah, I do tend to agree with that. And not even just on the offensive side of the ball, but you're talking about a defense that is insane. I mean, they've added stuff to that defense. Kareem Hunt would start on I do agree with that as well. Then my next one was Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes does a lot of things really well, but let's not forget that surrounding cast. You're talking about a guy. First of all, let's talk about Andy Reid, who's an offensive genius, been around for so long, who's put this offense all together. Then you talk about Tyreek Hill, is one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic wide receiver in the NFL. Then you're talking about Travis Kelce, another top 2, number 1 tight end in the NFL. And then, they just surround those guys with complete speed in versatility. So the Chiefs, they have a squad there, and they've even stacked up their offensive line this season so that they do not have to worry about Mahomes at all. He's going to have time back there. But then I did have Tennessee number 3, which I totally agree with you. When you have a running game like that with Derrick Henry, who can pound the rock, it's going to protect your quarterback. It's going to keep him safe. It's going to keep the defense guessing. Then you add Julio Jones to A.J. Brown. I mean, that's ridiculous. So they're up there. How do you feel about the Dallas Cowboys?
So the Dallas Cowboys, it's kind of the same with the Cincinnati Bengals. When you're coming back from a massive injury, I can't make a judgment until I actually see you on the field. Even if it's just a preseason game, I want to see him. I don't want to see him moving in practice with a red shirt on where you can't get hit and there's no fear of getting hurt. I want to see him moving around in game action. Also, Dak now has a shoulder issue as well. Yeah. So that's concerning as well. So I'm a big Dak fan. Everybody knows I support Dak Prescott. The guy's a really good quarterback. But, this is true. It's Dak or bust. They have nothing behind him. That's true. And that's a problem. So that's why I don't rank them as a great situation, as a top situation right now, because there's too many question marks with Dak Prescott at this point.
If Dak is healthy,
absolutely agree with that. And they still might only be 8-8.
Yeah, seriously. That's
another whole subject.
It's so true. The last one I wanted to throw in there, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they've set Tom Brady up really nicely. Between that stiff defense, they have a pretty good offensive line. They're able to pound the ball down people's throats with the run game.
Ronald Jones is extremely underrated running back.
Yeah, he's a powerhouse, man, and he's fat. He's good in all facets of running. So definitely like him. And then of course Leonard Fournette's back there. But then their wide receiving core, You can even go down the list all the way to guys like Scotty Miller. I mean, that guy's a stud as well.
Yeah.
So you have guys above him like Godwin, like Evans. So, yeah, they got weapons there in Tampa Bay as well, which has set up Tom Brady perfectly, as you saw with the Super Bowl run there. So we'll kind of leave that segment there. Definitely some interesting QB situations. I love this episode talking about all the quarterbacks, all the different situations.
The NFL circles around quarterback. That's all.
Exactly.
The league is all about the quarterbacks.
It is. And I feel like everybody that's watched today had a great time talking about this as well. And maybe a part of it is that, but after watching years of Eagles wide receivers, anybody
might be starting on the Eagles, Scotty Miller.
Anybody who can catch the ball is a stud in my eyes. Zero running back model. I got you, Jason. Oh man. So let's get into some Eagles camp notes. We'll briefly go through this. We are already up above the hour mark here. As always, on Turf Talk, on DSM Media, we are always above the hour mark.
It's almost 12 o'clock. It's almost time for the first Corona of the day.
It is Sunday Fun Day. Brady would make Greg Ward. Well, that is Phil's favorite player. So that
20 for 42. Greg Ward. Oh, man. Someday Greg Ward's going to call me out on that. Someday.
Someday.
And I'm going to bow down to him and say, I'm sorry. No problem.
Come on the DSM Media. Explain yourself, Greg. We know that you find the sweet spot. So let's talk about it. Phil off today.
Watch out. It's a good day for me, a bad day to be a Corona.
And so we'll get into some Eagles camp notes. The first thing I wanted to bring to you, and I know that the guys will love this as well, but how far are the Eagles going to push this Andre Dillard thing with the ones? How far are the Eagles going to be willing to take that? Are they going to be willing to start him? Because it seems like he's getting back-to-back days in camp with the ones. I know we don't want to overreact. So what are your thoughts on what they're doing with Dillard and what they're doing with Mailata?
Mailata's the starting left tackle. There's zero doubt in my mind. He's already won the job. I think the first day or two of camp, it was just to see where Andre Dillard was. And then obviously day 3, 4, 5, Mailata proved it's his job. Now you're going to see him sprinkled in still with the ones because you still have to make a decision with Andre Dillard, whether you cut him, whether you try to trade him, find a team that needs a change of scenery left tackle. I mean, they need to get him reps so that they can figure out what they're going to do with him. It is nothing to do with him taking the job from Jordan Mailata at this point. I would have said going into camp, there was a small 5% chance that maybe he could try to steal the job from Mailata. But now at this point, it's done. It's locked. It's Jordan Mailata, no doubt. They're just trying to find a way to trade or move on from Andre Dillard at this point.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question was what would you do with Andre Dillard? Would you keep him for depth? I mean, keeping a first-round pick for depth, that's a failure. But as far as, his future with the Eagles, obviously, as I can see from your comments, he's not going to have a chance at that left tackle spot, which I tend to agree. Why would he? What do you do with Andre Dillard? Do you try to trade it? Does he even have any value? Have they already tried to trade it?
There really is not much value there in Andre Dillard. You've got to hope that another team has another guy, a bust, a first or second round pick that just, people will say Andre Dillard needs a change of scenery. So some other team has a guy that needs a change of scenery. Hopefully you could just flop 2 players, whether it's a wide receiver or a defensive, back or safety. There's got to be something that we could do with another team. Be like, all right, you take our trouble, we'll take your trouble, and then we'll see if the change of scenery works. Because outside of that, you're not even going to get a 7th-round pick for Andre Dillard at this point. You're not. So if you can't trade him, you either got to keep him on your team or you got to cut him. If you cut him, somebody's going to take him.
Yeah, somebody will take a flyer.
He's not going to make it to your practice squad. So you got to hope for a trade. Otherwise, he's going to get cut.
Yeah, and George hit it here. A change of scenery scenario is best case. I truly agree with that. The next thing I wanted to hit, obviously, I think it was maybe Friday or was it Saturday? Yesterday. Basically, every reporter was saying that Hurts had his worst day of camp. It's also his birthday, so it sucks seeing all of that, coming out. He was throwing interceptions, kind of just had a really off day. But overall, they've said, I think it was Mike Kay. Was it Mike Kay that said, while he hasn't done anything that says he shouldn't have the job, he also hasn't done anything that solidified him as having the job. So where are you at with Jalen Hurts? Obviously, we don't want to overreact. It's just training camp. He's going to have his up and downs as a second-year quarterback. Is it more on Hurts, or is this defense just kind of looking dominating in training camp? What's going on here?
Well, first off, you got to give some credit to the defense. The defensive front obviously is performing out of all the positional groups at Eagles camp. The defensive front 4 or 8, whatever you want to call them, because they got about 7 or 8 quality guys on the defensive front line there,
right,
are having a great camp. Okay, everybody's saying that those positions, the ends and the tackles, are dominating camp. Secondly, every time Hurts has a bad day, who's the left tackle one? Andre Dillard. And then you can only expect if Jalen Hurts is trying to work on staying in the pocket, not scrambling, but Dillard keeps letting Josh Sweat, who's having the best camp out of any Eagle right now, in the backfield. What's Jalen Hurts to do? The Eagles still have a mixed bag at wide receiver. Devontae Smith, their best wide receiver, is still hurt. So what is Jalen Hurts supposed to do? I think Jalen Hurts hasn't done anything. Like I know what report I shared it out, the Mike Kay report, where Hurts hasn't done anything great, but anything bad. You got to look at the whole team and the whole situation. And the one thing people are forgetting about also is Jalen Hurts is impressing in the leadership department, in the team leader aspect of it, pulling guys aside. Jalen Reagor the other day when he was getting blasted, pulling him aside after the coaches were yelling at him, to walk him through it. So I think that is what puts him over the edge. It's his job. He's the quarterback one. And yes, you're going to still have the Deshaun Watson rumors floating around until he does something extraordinary. But, I'm confident going into the season that we can have an entertaining season with Jalen Hurts as our quarterback one still. Notice, George, I didn't say winning season. I said entertaining season.
Yes, and I do like that answer, because that's ultimately all I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, a Super Bowl contending or a playoff run. I'm just looking for an offense that looks like it knows what it's doing, has an idea of an identity. So that's really what I'm looking for there. Before I jump to the wide receiver convo, I just wanted to ask, have you heard anything as far as the running back room? If anybody's been, really impressive in that area. I haven't heard too much. Maybe I'm not looking in the right sources, but the only thing that I've seemed to hear is that Miles Sanders is having drop troubles in camp. But aside from that, what have you heard anything that's kind of
again? It's kind of like I hear it's kind of a lot like the quarterback, where every day Jason Huntley has a big play, or Karen Johnson has one big play, but again, nobody is doing anything extraordinary, because I've said it before: wide receiver and running back, there's going to be tough calls. In the running back room, you got Miles Sanders, you got Boston Scott, who I thought was on the bubble till Nick Sirianni the other day, Thursday, had this glowing report about how great Boston Scott is. You got him, you got Kerryon Johnson, you got Kenny Gainwell, you got Jason Huntley, you got Killins, you got Jordan Howard, you got 7 or 8 running backs. You normally keep 4, maybe you keep 5 this year. I don't know. It's going to be really, really tough decision on who gets cut and who makes the team. And I think I read, whether it was Chris Franklin or Mike Kay, saying that a couple practices, the average over the couple practices, that Boston Scott is getting almost as many touches as Miles Sanders.
That's interesting. And so then I guess my question to that was, like, Gainwell, he's not going to make it to the practice squad, right?
No, Kenny Gainwell
will not make it to the practice squad.
Kenny Gainwell make the so it's really going to be it's Sanders, it's Scott, it's Gainwell, and then it's going to be Kerryon Johnson most likely, and then if they keep a 5th running back, Jason Huntley, that would be my thing. Jason Huntley's been the main kick returner in practices, so Huntley isn't going to make the practice squad either. So you keep 5, I guess, but it's a tough call because Huntley's impressing with the 2s and the 3s. So
they even have, they have Jordan Howard out there as well.
I've heard he hasn't been disappointing either, but he's
got to make
he doesn't have he has a non-guaranteed contract as well. So you can cut him and bring him back. You might even be able to sneak Jordan Howard on your practice squad, honestly.
Yeah, that is fair, because it didn't seem like the interest was out there for him. As far as the wide receiver position, so the big thing this week was kind of, the high tower.
Mhm.
Obviously, Devontae Smith's out for a few weeks. He's on the team. He's the first-round draft pick. John Hightower got an injury that may slow him down. How do you feel about this wide receiver corps? First of all, how many do you think that they're actually going to keep? And then I know you and George have kind of been going back and forth with this J-Jaw hype. So you guys obviously think that he's going to, show himself. He's going to make the team. Who are your guys going into this camp or going into the preseason, I should say, that you're looking
I think the Hightower injury, the fact that he's probably not going to be back till at least the last preseason game, I think that pretty much it was going to come down to Hightower or Ortega-Whiteside as the last wide receiver. Now with this Hightower injury, that might have spelled the end of Jonathan Hightower. Because he's injured, you might be able to practice squad him. Hey, maybe they could find a way. Sometimes you can say somebody's injured for the whole year, put them on the injured reserve list for the whole year, and it's basically like a stash place and all. Maybe they could do that with Jonathan Hightower, maybe. But yeah, I think Ortega-Whiteside makes the team. I think your top three are, Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward. Even though I'm not high on Ward and Fulgham, they probably are your top four. Quez Watkins is 5, and Ortega-Whiteside is your 6. I think it's pretty much almost a guarantee now that that's the way it goes. Very rarely do you keep more than 6 wide receivers.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it would be more on the fence of 5 to 6. So then we talk about the 6 that you'd keep. So you mentioned them there. There was also obviously, I won't call them rumors, but I'll just say, a lot of Eagles hype talk about bringing in like a veteran wide receiver to that group. What does that look like? I know Nate Washington was thrown out there from Pittsburgh.
He's not really a veteran, though.
Right?
Yeah. That's that. You bring in Nate Washington if you're not confident in Quez Watkins or Ortega-Whiteside, to take one of your back end, spots on your depth chart there. But yeah, you kind of need a veteran voice, even if it's just for the preseason. I know nobody wants to hear Alshon Jeffries, but he's available. Kenny Stills is available. I was looking at the list for my last show. It's like Des Bryant's like the 4th best wide receiver. There's no veteran wide receivers out there.
Yeah.
But it does help to have a voice to teach these young guys how to be pros. But on the flip side of the equation, if you're keeping Zach Ertz, which at this point it seems like they are, Zach Ertz can be that veteran voice in the wide receiver room too. You saw him talking with Jalen Reagor after his bad day. So, maybe the veteran voice is being blown out of proportions if you're keeping Zach Ertz.
And so before we move off the offense, because I do want to finish up with the defense. We'll get into that. Is there any part of you that feels like Landon Dickerson could somehow work himself into the starting lineup? I'm not sure what his timetable is with his injury coming back. George just says SMH. I'm wondering if is he referring to Ertz or what's he?
Well, we know he wants Ertz cut, so it could be that. Whatever.
I don't mind Ertz being on the squad, man. He's already made it this far.
He's building value, so we could actually trade him for something at this point. Or if you're going to lose,
referring to Ertz.
Or if you're going to lose Dallas Goedert because you can't work out a contract extension with him, maybe you keep Zach Ertz. It's highly unlikely, but that's always a possibility. Landon Dickerson, I don't think he'll be ready to start week 1. I don't. He hasn't even practiced with the team yet. He's still in the physically unable to perform list and stuff like that. Or actually, I think he's on the non-football injury list, actually. There's so many different lists that you can be on.
It's confusing.
You can't keep track of which one's which. But, he will be starting, I think, at some point this year. As George is saying, by the end of the year. I think week 3, week 4, week 5, you could definitely see him starting. The fact that he hasn't actually participated with the 1s, 2s, or 3s yet is just saying that he's just not going to be ready for week 1 as a starter.
Yeah.
But, you're not going to see him start the year on the PUP list or anything like that. He'll be part of the final roster, and hopefully he's at the very least a backup by week 1.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see. And just the reason I asked that is because my outlook on Dickerson, and I know I was kind of questioning the pick, at draft time, which I've had time to cool down, think about it. And as always,
draft day is all about emotion. Then you got to let it digest.
All about emotion. You can't get mad about a guy that can help in the trenches. That's the most important part of your team aside from the quarterback position. And when I look at Landon Dickerson's resume, minus the injury history, obviously, he is a top 5 guy on this offensive line, right? His build, his makeup, his pedigree all makes for him to be a starter in the NFL. And I'm looking forward to, I said I was a little upset on draft day just because of what was left there. But when you look at Landon Dickerson, if he pans out, this could be another generational lineman for the Eagles here. So yes, I see Jason down here with the McPherson pick. This guy is another guy. I know you mentioned Josh Sweat, which we'll talk about him a little bit. Zach McPherson is another guy that is right there, is at the top of people's lists at camp. And a lot feel that, if Steven Nelson wasn't signed, he would be that guy. And it does appear that way just by the way they're describing his play in camp. How are you feeling about McPherson and kind of the uproar that he's been getting at camp so far?
I think it's temper expectations a little bit. He is a rookie. He is having a great camp, probably number 2 on defense next to Josh Sweat for sure.
Yeah.
The signing of Steven Nelson gives you the luxury to continue to slowly develop Zach. Okay. He's doing great. And if Steven Nelson wasn't signed, maybe he beats out Avonte Maddox for the cornerback 2 position. But now you got Maddox in the slot. You got Nelson and Slay starting. McPherson will be part of the team. He'll be your backup cornerback. You could take your time with him. Okay. And, week 1, week 2, he plays a couple snaps, fill in for, to give, Slay or Nelson a breather. But then as he impresses, Avonte Maddox isn't this superstar slot cornerback either. He's better in the slot than the outside, but he's still not a superstar guy. At some point, week 3, week 4, week 5, if McPherson continues to develop slowly, then you can put him opposite Slay, and then you can slide Steven Nelson into the slot, which he's just as good of a slot receiver or cornerback as he is an outside guy. So you are set up where you can develop him slowly and just every week add 5 more snaps to him. And there's no pressure in that situation. Yeah. And I love those no pressure situations for rookies, especially guys that drafted 3rd, 4th, 5th round. They're guys that are supposed to make the team, but not necessarily be your stars right from the get-go. You thrust them into the limelight too quickly. They fail. They crack under the pressure. McPherson can go slowly. Take your time with him. There's no rush to rush him with Steven Nelson on this team.
And I think, you talk about DB in the NFL, and I think that's one of those positions that if you throw them into the fire, you can ruin a player, literally. Like, you can ruin their confidence, because that's what the DB position is, majorly about, is confidence in the position, staying in front of wide receivers. And then the other end of it, I would say, is just the fact that we talked about the wide receiver room. Yes, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of talent there. But these are very inexperienced guys. These aren't veterans. These aren't stars in the NFL that he's going up against in practice in order to get a real feel. If he's
guarding Hightower and Arcega-Whiteside. Yeah. It's not like he's guarding these. He's not out there guarding Tyreek Hill. He's not out there guarding, any of these top tier guys. So
exactly, and that's the thing. When you get thrown out there against a Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf tandem, then you'll really find out what your DB group is about. Exactly. But yeah, just to follow up on the defensive line in general, seems like every year they find some way to make that part of the team deeper. Mm-hmm. And kudos, we haven't said it often in the last few years, but kudos to Howie on a great offseason. Mm-hmm. We've obviously we brought Derek Barnett back. Josh Sweat, is kind of just on his complete uprising. He's going up the Richter scale very quickly. Javon Hargrave, kind of a guy I haven't heard much about so far throughout camp, but a guy that once again, carries a lot of expectations with that contract he received last year. And then of course Fletcher Cox, who some would say he had a down year last year or the year before. Fletcher Cox is always a guy. He's a freak. So whenever he has guys surrounding him, it's going to make him look better when he can get some attention taken off of himself. And then, of course, BG, who is, it seems like he never seems to show his age. But then we talk about, adding guys like Ryan Kerrigan, Teron Jackson, Milton Williams to that defensive line, young guys, not Ryan Kerrigan, excuse me, not a young guy, but the other 2 guys there. But Ryan Kerrigan brings the experience, and I like what they're doing with the tandems there. As far as putting BG with Derek Barnett and then putting Kerrigan with Josh Sweat, you kind of have that veteran matched with a young guy there. And how do you feel about that front 7 in general? That extends even back to the linebacking group. How do you feel about them so far throughout training camp?
The defensive line, I said earlier, they're dominating camp. There's no doubt about it. Josh Sweat, I think, has earned a starting job. I mean, I think he's going to be your starting end opposite of Brandon Graham.
Jeez.
Milton Williams was kind of a hybrid. Milton Williams is playing end a lot. So, I mean, we're loaded on the line. And if we win games because of our defense, we're going to win games because that front seven or front four, seven rotating guys is going to be great. Having Ryan Kerrigan, whether they're even playing him a little bit at linebacker. I know he's out with a hand injury right now, but I mean, the line is set up to dominate like it did in 2017. It really is. When we won that Super Bowl, it was because we had a great rotation on the front seven. Josh Sweat's only thing is he going to stay healthy? Yeah. What was the most games he's played? 10 or 11 games in his career. So, it needs to be managed, the workload, because got to make sure he's healthy. So, and I think the managing the workload is most important for Fletcher Cox. Because if you go back in all his successful years, the years that he earned his bones as an elite, scary defensive tackle, he was playing 55 to 60% of the snaps. It's when you get him up into that 80% snap range, where by week 12, week 13, he's toast. Big guys like that moving at that level, it's hard to maintain that body.
And so my final question to you, Phil, get you out of here. We're up over an hour and a half now.
Whatever. 6 minutes till noon when my first Corona needs cracked.
How good can this defense be, as far as the unit altogether? We talk about the secondary. This secondary seems to have a little bit more confidence behind it compared to recent years, with Steven Nelson and Darius Slay tandem paired up there, guys that have experience. How are you feeling about this defense? Hopefully Rodney McLeod is back by week 1. Hopefully he can get back in the groove of things. How are you feeling as this defense as a whole? Where would you maybe throw them out there? Are they just a complete question mark for you?
It's a question mark for the whole team in general. I still see safety being an issue. Anthony Harris is a really good player, but he's on a 1-year deal for a reason. McLeod, you bring up him. Is he going to be back for week 1? I don't know, maybe. But how's he going to come back? Is he going to have that explosiveness? He's not a young puppy anymore. Linebacker is still a question mark to me. Eric Wilson was a good signing, but again, another 1-year cheap deal for a reason. Alex Singleton's a good player, but has deficiencies in his game. Same thing with TJ Edwards and Davian Taylor, who was having a great camp till he got hurt. Quad injuries, that killed all the momentum. They tried to bring him back right away from that quad injury. It was too soon, and now he's out for weeks. So there's still question marks on the defense. I think the defense could impress and maybe get into that like 9th, 10th, 11th range, but that's the top it could get. Most likely it's going to be a mid-level defense. It's not going to be bad enough to fall in the bottom 5 like it did last year, but it's not going to be good enough to finish in the top 10. So they might be like a 12th to 15th ranked defense, and that's, conservatively speaking, probably the best you can hope for out of this defense.
Yeah. And ultimately that wouldn't be bad,
That'd be an improvement.
Yeah, exactly. And for a team that will most likely, be a middle of the pack team at the very best, then, that's all you can expect. But what I would say, the difference for me this camp compared to other camps is just the fact that we are hearing about guys, that may not be starters. They are young guys that are getting the nod in camp. They're getting the experience. They're getting the reps, where we simply and maybe it was just not reported the same. I don't know, because I'm looking at the coaching style that's being referenced in just this training camp so far compared to previous resumes. And, it just looks night and day. I mean, you hear about Nick Sirianni getting into Jalen Reagor's face, like reaming him out. And then what's Jalen Reagor do the next couple of days of camp? He excels. He plays way better. And you saw the crazy catch over Darius Slay. So I love the coaching style. And I don't know if Doug Peters, I don't know what was going on there. And it was kind of what we talked about last season. Whereas if you just make simple changes to the scheme, to the way you handle players, to the way you develop players, you can see an uptick in production. You can see an uptick in potential. And I think that's what we're seeing. Yeah, I think George is spot on. And when you saw Nick Sirianni, it's like when you saw him in these introductory press conferences, you didn't really see that side of him, right? Where he could be on the field yelling at players. And I think it's great that he can show both sides like that, where he is a full-on team guy, but he is a player's coach. But at the same time, he's going to hold these guys accountable, especially that wide receiver room, which just gives me a ton of optimism with this team, because that was one of the areas that this team has struggled mightily to develop. Yes, we can bring guys in off the street like Alshon Jeffries, bring guys like Deshaun Jackson back, but we have not been able to develop talent at the wide receiver position. And it seems like he is putting a major focus into that position as a former wide receivers coach, former wide receiver himself. Mm-hmm. But it's exciting times. And what I would say is just Eagles fans, take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, camp is training camp. It's just that. They're playing against each other. There's a lot of different factors that factor in. And I'm not trying to get too high or too low. I just want to get to the season. I want our team to be healthy. And I just want to go into – I want to have a good vibe going into the following season, where I feel that's our time. That's going to be our time to make some steps forward towards being a contender. Should help reduce injuries as well, giving those younger guys more reps. Give the veterans a day off. It's a lot different when they're going as hard as they can the other days, and then you give them a day off, whereas they're coming off a game and then they're just given 2 or 3 days off during the week. So I do like where Sirianni's at. Did you have any final thoughts you wanted to add in about Eagles camp so far? Or
no? I will say Hall of Fame this weekend. Speaking Eagles, can we please get Eric Allen in the NFL Hall of Fame? God, man. I know you're a little young. You don't remember, Eric Allen. Can we please get Eric Allen in the NFL Hall of Fame, people?
Is there any other guys? Just drop some knowledge on me as well. Is there any other guys from the Eagles or just guys in general that you think are, kind of –
I think he should make – I don't know if he was eligible this year. I think next year is his first year eligible. One of the first, special teams guys to ever make it will be Devin Hester. Nice. One of the greatest, if not the greatest returner of all time. I'm looking at the finalists that were – available to make the Hall of Fame this year. He wasn't on the list, so that means this upcoming year will be his first year eligible. He should. And, there's a lot of other, wide receivers that you get in, Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne, guys like that. But for some reason, wide receivers, unless you're like the elite of the elite wide receivers, there's some kind of bias about putting wide receivers in there. But
a lot of competition there.
Yeah. But I'll just end my talk with Eric Allen. Put him in the Hall of Fame, people. You're idiots for not voting this guy in.
And also, we'll end it like that as well. Shout out to Harold Carmichael for finally getting it. Congratulations to him, one of the greatest Eagles wide receivers, greatest Eagles players ever. So congratulations to him, well deserved. Me and George actually got into not an argument, but just a conversation, because I commented on it was just a follow up. I think Mike Kay said that. Nick Foles, Darren Sproles, Brent Selleck, LaShawn McCoy's numbers should all be retired for the Eagles. And, you had guys commenting saying, just Foles or, just this person. And so I mentioned Zach Ertz as well, like if you're going to mention Foles. But then I thought George brought up a good point that, you don't really have to retire anybody's number in reality. It's not going to take anything away from what they do on the field. And I think that is the same with Hall of Fame. Obviously, it's recognition. But just as far as, that being the determining factor of successful career, I don't think it goes that far. George. Hey, and George, it wasn't really my opinion. I was more or less just questioning if Nick Foles or like a Darren Sproles or even a Brent Selleck, I'd have to go back and look at Brent Selleck's numbers and contributions. Obviously, he was a great leader. Mm-hmm. If those guys deserve to have their number retired, then I would think Zach Ertz would deserve it as well. He's been a lifelong Eagle as well. Even a guy like Fletcher Cox, if you're going to get into those type of things. So, but no, ultimately we ended up getting it to an agreement, which he said Brian Dawkins is basically the only Eagle over the last couple decades that really deserves his number to be retired, which I can't disagree with that. But that is going to be it for this episode of Turf Talk, guys. Thank you for all the comments. We will run out of numbers. That is the truth, George. We need as many as we can get these days. But Phil, thank you for joining me today. As always, a pleasure to have you as my co-host here. And then everybody in the comments, George, Jason, Devin, everybody that stuck with us throughout the whole show here. We went up to 1 hour and 40 minutes. Thanks for tuning in. Takes a lot of your attention, and we appreciate it, as always, the support. Final notes with DSM Media here. Obviously, we're going to have the open practice tailgate August 22nd. We're going to keep beating it into your head like a dead horse. We're going to keep talking about it. We'll be out there around 4 p.m. on August 22nd, getting started. We'll have food, beer. We'll be having a live show. We'll get the fans involved. We'll do interviews, all types of stuff. We will have Kenwood Beer supplying us with beer for that event. So we got you covered. Just come out, enjoy yourselves, go to the open practice. We got 6 tickets we're going to raffle off. It's just going to be an overall good time. It's before the season starts, so we got nothing to lose. We're not going to see any L's that day. It's just practice.
It's a good time.
Come out and have some fun. Have a good time with the DSM crew. There will be plenty from all around, plenty of Eagles fans, but should just be a good time. We're raffling off a Devontae Smith jersey as well. So plenty incentives to come out and join us. Get you on the show. Definitely get your opinion of the Birds this season. But guys, thanks for tuning in. Make sure, if you're not already, follow DSM Media at DSM_media on Twitter. Phil, what is the handle for Facebook, if you remember?
It's it's DSM Media, but if you type in at DSM Media 1 is what it'll come up.
DSM Media 1. You can pull us up on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's at DSM.DoSomethingMajor, spelled out exactly how it sounds. DSM period, do something major. That's what this brand is all about. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Follow us. Get involved. We always take you guys' opinions, comments into account. So definitely love getting the fans and listeners involved. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to follow Phil at Beard of Knowledge on Twitter. Follow me at Scotty Drown. That's going to be it for this show, guys. Thanks for tuning in.